Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm going to be talking about some dark romance recommendations I have for you. Now, trigger warning, spoiler alert, all of the various content warnings that you could possibly need. This is about dark romance, which means things are going to get hot, heavy and dubious when it comes to consent. So all of these books have incredibly explicit sex scenes. That's kind of the point to them. So if this is not your cup of tea, I'd suggest that you just skip this video. You're going to find nothing that you want here and I'll catch you on the next one. And with that in mind, I'm not going to bother prefacing anything else with any other trigger warnings. This is your responsibility to go find out what is in these books beforehand. Many dark romance authors list trigger warnings on their websites to let people know the exact kind of content that is going to be in their books if you do have specific areas that are triggers for you. Now, let's start talking about the books. The first one I'm going to talk about is Losers Part 1 and 2 by Harley. Roux. This is actually a full two-part novel that is based off of a novella that she wrote called The Dare, and it's about our prim princess, our most popular girl in the school, who loses a dare to one of the losers and then has to do what he says for the rest of the night, and therefore kinky shenanigans ensue. Book 1, you don't have to have read The Dare beforehand, but it is available, I think, on Kindle Unlimited or on Kobo or something, so basically online. It would help beforehand to set the scene, but it is, she comes back to her hometown and then has run-ins with these gentlemen again. So there is Mason, who is the main sort of ringleader of the group, but then there are also 3 other gentlemen, and it is very much a why choose, not even reverse harem kind of romance, because there are also multiple relationships within the group as well. So I don't think any particular labels are put out, but most of the men would definitely be at bare minimum bi, because they all sort of interact with each other. There's sort of an underlying threat of her place in society, whether she wants to join these losers or like continue to be in with the in crowd, and then there's sort of a subplot going on with Mason's father as well, who's kind of a bit of a threat. But ultimately this is just some really kinky sex. Very good fun. I enjoyed the fact that the guys interacted a lot, and it also talks extensively about consent in a way that a lot of these other books don't. So I do think that it is a better example of dark romance if you are somebody who doesn't like dark romance specifically because of the fact that it always seems a bit dubious and all the men deserve to be in jail. So yeah, entertaining, and I love Harley Roux. Definitely check out everything else she's written. She's fantastic. The next book I wanted to talk about is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This is book 1 of a series. I think I've read book 5 or 4 as well, and it was like quite good fun. It doesn't feature on this list though, so let's continue. This is sort of a marriage and convenience between 2 sort of mafia type families, and it is about the 2 of them trying to overcome the fact that they have a lot of animosity. So you've got that like natural enemies to lovers as well. It opens with some fantastic scenes. I think she sets fire to something, he tries to drown her, she tries to poison him with the fact that he's allergic to strawberries on their wedding day by kissing him. It's all just, you know, good fun, like lots of, you know, assault against each other. Great energy going on here. But then naturally they will overcome that animosity and end up moving towards something together. So yeah, it is entertaining, and it does definitely contain some really fun sex scenes because all of that hatred has to go somewhere. I have had mixed responses to like the rest of the books. Sophie Lark is not one of my favourites, but this one in particular I did enjoy, and this one definitely is a bit of a TikTok darling. I see like snippets of it pop up all the time, and I do think it's worth the read. The next one is Fatal Cure by Cate Lockhart, and this is technically book 2 in the Secrets in the City series. I have not read book 1. You don't need to. That's the joy of romance. Jump into a series wherever you want. This one I really enjoyed because rather than it being like 2 warring mafia families, which is such a common trope in dark romance, I think mafia romance is its own separate subsection, like billionaire romances as well. Honestly, romance gets so granular, it's ridiculous. But this one was quite fun because the heroine was actually part of the police and it represents the DEA. So it was quite entertaining that you had that then like good versus evil kind of energy, and like he wants to do all sorts of like terrible, immoral things, whereas she like actually has a backbone and like believes in the law and has a moral code and has to try and like make him better. She's going into it to like avenge her family, and I do believe that's like some mistaken identity stuff, yeah, where he's not too sure if she's a member of the DEA or not. So it's kind of that like underlying threat, are you going to betray me or not kind of energy to it. Full confession, can't really remember much about how the sex scenes are, so just read it and tell me what you think in the comments below if you want to. But I did enjoy, like I say, the sort of the slight twist to the classic that you get for a mafia romance. The next book series is the Salacious Players Club books by Sara, Cate. I have read 4, I think, of these out of I'm not too sure how many, but this is basically following a cast of characters who they own a BDSM dungeon-like sex club, and it is about the various different aspects of that and them sort of exploring that in their own relationships. This one, like Loses, is much better when it comes to acknowledging consent. People aren't just, you know, slamming people around or choking them out without having conversations, and it definitely is interesting because it makes a lot more distinctions about the BDSM community and different kinds of kinks out there in comparison to some of the dark romance books, which are just like, well, naturally I'm going to do absolutely everything to you. So probably my favorite is the book Mercy, because it means that we got that's the one that has a woman dominatrix who is exploring a relationship, like has her first time as a dominatrix exploring a relationship with her sub. It's the first time with him being a sub, and it was quite enjoyable to have a book where the woman is in charge, because so many of these it's a dominant man and a submissive woman, which is fine, you know, we enjoy that, that's great, there's a reason why it's a classic, but it is enjoyable to see those other kind of like characters into play. There are quite large age gaps in these, so just to be aware of that fact as well, but yeah, really enjoyable, lovely storylines, and sort of a lot of like emotional growth and exploration of sex as sort of part of your identity. Then we have the Twisted series by Huang. This is another booktube darling, most definitely. You'll see it all over TikTok, and for me, I'm going to be recommending Twisted Hate in particular, although there are 4 or 5 in the series. I've not actually read book 1, and I've heard very dubious things about book 1. I've done book 2 to book 4. Twisted Hate is a basically enemies with benefits kind of energy, and is about 2 characters. I think it's like a brother's best friend kind of vibe as well, or like, yeah, 2 best friends or something, kind of like the sort of proximity of best friends hooking up, this sort of like they'll never get together and then they do kind of energy, and there's a sort of miscommunication there about whether they're actually going to tell each other their feelings or just try and keep it purely physical. It definitely has the best sex scenes of all 3 books. It has some incredibly fun public sex scenes, and I do think it's just, yeah, the hottest of all of them, so do definitely check that out. And I really enjoy our heroine character. I think she's got a lot of fire and energy to her, which is greatly appreciated. Check out the other books as well, they are good fun, don't get me wrong, I do like the Twisted series, but this one in particular is just my favourite. The next book I want to talk about is The Lazarus, which is book 1 of the Vernum City by Marlow Lockheart. This one, if Fatal Cure was like she's with the DEA and he's the bad guy, and like she makes him better, this has got a similar energy but the flip reverse. She is still involved in the police in some way, and he's like still sort of head of a drug dealing kind of thing, but he shows her that actually police can't be trusted and the system doesn't work, and she needs to become a vigilante with him. So I really enjoy that kind of energy of corrupting her in comparison to Fatal Cure, which is her saving him. In terms of the sex scenes, the banter beforehand definitely has way more heat than the actual scenes. There's a lot of promises from our main characters to do each other proper filthy, and then it never really quite gets there or actually delivers on that. So it's probably a safer one if you're dipping your toe into dark romance and don't want the full-blown BDSM scenes that you're going to be getting in something like the Salacious Players Club. However, really enjoyed the storyline, loved the dynamic, and loved the conversation about like what is the law and what does it represent. It's always fun when a dark romance decides to dip into like morality and things that actually matter, rather than just being like, and then they fucked against a wall. This video totally could have been 2, but fuck it, we're just going to keep going because I have more books to talk about. The next one I want to talk about is Dear Enemy by Kristen Callihan. Kristen Callihan is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to writing. I've also read some of her paranormal romances and at least one of her rock star romances. Fantastic fun. She is great. We love her. This one is about a woman who her sisters managed to get into some shady shit, and basically she makes a deal to be the personal assistant of this big hotshot guy so that her sister doesn't go to jail, and they have, I think they knew each other in high school, so you've got a bit of a second chance energy going on there. It's about her finding out about his softer side and then you know, learning to stand up for herself, especially against her sister, and it is really enjoyable watching the 2 interact and sort of her managing to bring him down a peg or 2 as well. Kristen Callihan is just a really good writer. She does characters really, really well. She does sex scenes really, really well. She's just sort of a classic powerhouse for a reason, and it's really nice if you're a fan of her to be able to like jump around all the different subgenres of romance rather than sticking to one area. and they all feel really fresh, and it doesn't feel like just the same storyline with a different sort of setting or dressing over the top. She's one who you could read a fair number of her books and not feel like you were repeating yourself each time. The next book is Priceless by Miranda Silver, and this is definitely up there with one of the kinkier ones on this list, and is definitely not strong when it comes to storyline. But if you really want to explore the humiliation kink in particular, then this one is pretty fucking hot and does it really, really well. Basically, it's a woman who is desperate for some cash. She's working at college, and a guy who has some money who is convinced that he can see in her like a need to be dominated kind of energy, and so he offers to pay her to basically do whatever he asks, and then kinky, smutty, sexy stuff ensues. This one is super sketchy when it comes to consent at the beginning, and like I say, is really, really thin on the ground when it comes to plot, but is really good fun. So if you were looking for something that is very lighthearted, not lighthearted, wrong kind of phrasing, light on content, then check this one out. And the final one I want to talk about is Priest by Simone. This one is raunchy. It is about a priest who has made a vow of celibacy and then ends up breaking it with a woman who is just kind of tempting him constantly. If you were a big fan of Fleabag season 2 but then was just heartbroken that they never actually got it on, then finally you can read this book and stop edging yourself with it, because they actually get it on repeatedly. If you're someone who's highly religious and going to be offended by things being debauched and besmirched and desecrated is probably the word I'm looking for here, don't touch this book. It's really bad in many, many ways. It does have some conversations about like the church and the incredibly sus background of the church and its long history, and sort of our main character's interactions with the church because of that, which fine I guess to read about, but like didn't really have a place in this incredibly filthy dark romance. But I really enjoyed it, and it was really pretty, which is sort of a weird thing to say, but the sex scenes are surprisingly lyrical in this one. I wouldn't recommend continuing the series, however, because book 2 just goes back to like a guy defiling a girl who, like, she is a nun and she's gonna, or like is about to become a nun and has like a hit list of things that she wants to do, and it just becomes a bit of a weird dynamic where she's really inexperienced and he's gonna do loads of stuff. And I didn't vibe with that one at all, but I really enjoyed Priest. It was very entertaining. So there we have it. There is a bunch of dark romance books, so if you are feeling horny and bored, then feel free to check these out, and do let me know in the comments down below what you think. If you have any recommendations to dark romance, please do let me know, and yeah, feel free to sort of expect more romance on this channel in the future. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.